So in the last 12 months, I've done quite a bit of stuff. Like I've gone to Hormozy's workshops. I met Alex Volkanovski, went to Dubai for a month. Been to the US, been to Europe a couple of times, got a dog, scaled a business to a pretty good level. And, I don't necessarily say that to flex, but I wanted to make this video to just kind of document some of the lessons that I've gained over the year. Because, it wasn't that long ago that I was kind of your typical just out of high school figuring out what you're going to do with your life. And I wanted to just get this here so I could have these lessons documented for myself. For others, I'm sure it'll be valuable for you guys as well. But even just to show my kids in like 20 years, because I think that'll be cool too. So in this video, I'm basically going to be covering some of the biggest lessons I've learned that I'm going to take into the future. So take them, leave them, do whatever you want, but I think these are pretty valuable in my opinion. The first thing that I've learned, which is probably one of the most impactful, and you can kind of see this across every industry, is that excellence is typically correlated with the level of standards that you have. And it might sound like one of those cringe things, but what's that movie, The Bear, where that guy's the chef, and he's kind of like a psychopath about how clean everything is and all that sort of stuff. It's like that, except with everything. And the thing that you'll find is that if you're ever lucky enough to become in contact with someone who's at the top of their industry, it's pretty likely that you'll find they're not really doing anything that's insane. Like, it's not really like they have any hacks or they're doing a different strategy. It's just quite usually that they have ridiculously high standards of being elite. They know exactly what being elite looks like at their specific skill or specific craft, and they just do that every single time, and they don't really deviate from those standards. Of course, a lot of the time when you see someone right at the top of the industry, it's not just that they have high standards. They're probably really, really talented, or they have some kind of genetic gift, but you can see that the mix of their kind of genetic gift or their unique edge in tandem with their stupidly high standards is kind of what gets them there. It's not actually any strategies or anything like that. The strategies and stuff, they kind of get revealed by having the standards be so high. So you'll see someone just operating at such a high level, and all the strategies, all the hacks they use, they get revealed and created as a result of the standard being so high, if that makes sense. So for example, when I met my current business partner, Matt, and for context, he's scaled agencies to over 900K a month in under a year. I was really curious. I was like, what is this guy doing that's making him be able to scale businesses so quickly? Like, is he using a certain ad strategy? Is there a certain sales system or something like that? Is there some hack that once you get behind the scenes, you'll figure out what it was or what it may be that helps him scale? And I kind of just ended up realizing after a few months, oh shit, like there's actually just nothing, which it might sound like something you've heard before, but when you really get that ingrained into your bones as something that you know to be a fact, that there's nothing except a way higher standard and way higher kind of genetic abilities in a sense, you'll start to kind of realize how you can get that growth for yourself. And pretty much the conclusion I came to was that as much as it sounds like a shitty thing that you don't want to hear, it is just the fundamentals that will get you to the next level. And it is just having that higher standard. And, if you can have that genetic edge, it's not going to hurt you. For example, in Matt's case, it's just an ability to look at a screen for 16 hours a day without getting tired and just continually do work. So, as you can imagine, if that's you and you have those types of standards, great. If that's not you, then you might just have a different style of standards, but then still try and replicate what they've done. Another good example of that is I saw a video of Chris Bumstead training with David Lade. And David Lade was like on the shoulder press or something, and he was kind of gave up after a set. And he was like, oh, I've got to save my arms for later. I've got, a few more sets left. And then C-Bum just kind of looked at him like, what the fuck, mate? Like, what did you just say? Like, why the hell would you ever do that? Like, why are you not training to absolute failure every single time that you do anything? And it's kind of another really strong example that the person who's really at that top level is almost confused, disgusted, or, just befuddled in general at anything that's below their standards. And when you're working with someone like that, the thing that you're actually learning is the standard it takes to be at the top. That is the thing that you take away. So for example, David Lade, when he goes back and trains the next time, now he kind of understands in his bones, like I said, there's a big difference between hearing, you've got to do this much work or this many sets or anything like that. But that proximity is where you learn the standard, and the standard is what you take away to go and get better results. And it might sound like I'm kind of larping on about this, but this is one of those things that actually drives results, and it actually drives better outcomes in your life when you kind of get that understanding deep in your bones. That's what I mean when I say excellence is very clearly correlated with standards. It's very, very clearly correlated. The second thing is it's definitely something a lot of people can resonate with, and it's that effort creates meaning. So, if you've ever studied for a test and you tried really, really hard in your studies and then you failed that test, it probably felt like shit. It probably did not feel good at all. But on the other hand, if you've ever not really tried out a test, you probably, maybe you went out the night before or something and then you failed the test, it doesn't matter at all. Like, you don't even care because you didn't even try. So you can see there that the thing that actually creates the meaning, the purpose, the fulfillment behind completing the task is how hard you try. Because when you don't try, you don't really care about the outcome. You don't really care about the process at all. But then when you really give it your all of a sudden you have that investment, you have that fulfillment. And then when you get the result, it's the best thing ever. Like, for example, when I was at school, I remember seeing guys that used to study really, really, really hard. And then when they got their grades back and they crushed it, that's the most fulfilling thing ever. You try really hard and you get the result. That is what winning looks like. That is what meaning looks like. Another good example of that is, the typical UFC fighter. If you've ever seen a UFC fighter like lose the championship belt or something and then they start crying in the cage, you'd probably be like, oh, what the hell? Like, it's a UFC fighter. They're meant to be the toughest guys in the world. They're meant to be, rock solid kind of macho. But the thing is, when you put yourself on the line that deeply, you're training hard for your whole life to get a result. You obviously work hard in the training camp. You probably had to get a win streak to get close to the belt in the first place. And then getting that kind of belt slipping away, that means everything. And it's because you put everything on the line to get that thing. And you can kind of see if you didn't try at all, like if you were just some bum off the street and you lost a fight, it's like, yeah, it's upsetting, like, of course, because you lost a fight. But it's different. You can tell that the meaning and the purpose is created through the effort, and it's not something that can come the other way around. So you can't really, sit around waiting for meaning and purpose to kind of fall from the sky or anything like that. It actually starts with trying really hard. I think a lot of people get caught up in thinking, what's the purpose of life? This isn't fulfilling me. Maybe you're working a job or something and it's not scratching your itch to do stuff. The first question I'd probably ask you is like, how hard are you trying? Like, are you trying really hard? Because if you were and you really had these goals that you were putting everything into and putting yourself on the line in that way, you'd probably feel a little bit of that meaning and you'd feel a little bit of that fulfillment. So the lesson that I really want you to take away from this is that the effort comes first and the fulfillment and the purpose and the meaning comes later. It doesn't just fall in your lap. That's a complete fallacy. And if you've been told that before, you've been told a lie. You need to try hard really, really, initially, and that kind of gets your momentum, and that's when you start really caring about stuff. The next lesson is a little bit similar to the first one, but I wanted to reiterate it in a bit of a different way because it's kind of separate. And what I wanted to drop here was that kind of just a little bit about the level of effort that is required to succeed. So if you remember the C-bum example, the David Lade thing, it's like, how hard do you have to go during your sets to actually get that big? And this is specifically in the case of business. When I first started out, you're kind of like, oh, I sent some emails, or, I ran some ads, and, I tried my best, and, I didn't get a client, or, I did get a client and maybe I only got one. So all of a sudden you're kind of looking at these things and thinking, I've done a little bit of work and I should have gotten the result already. But in reality, you can cross-reference this lesson with the first one and think, how hard did these people at the top go? How hard did they try? How much effort did they put in? At the risk of becoming more of like a kind of hustle and grind, work 100 hours a day type video, there is a certain level of grit that has to be put in for something to actually work. A lot of times online you see these highlight reels of people, like I said, going to Dubai, going here, going there, all of that stuff. But behind the scenes, 9 times out of 10, unless they're like scamming or doing some shady shit, there's probably years and years and years of building up sweat equity in these projects for people to start getting these results. And as a result of that, it's very easy to start doing something and kind of look at your situation and think, I'm working really hard. I'm sending my outreach messages, or I'm doing X, Y, and Z. I deserve the result already. But then if you fast forward, like for example, me when I first started out compared to me now, it's like I'm probably doing 10 to 100 times the amount of work now as I was when I first started. And that's kind of just as a result of way higher standards, and also, like I said, just understanding what is required to get the results that you want. Like, you might think, I've sent my 10 cold outreach messages, I've done a good job and I deserve the result. In reality, you need to send 100 outreach messages a day and do it for 6 months and not blow your brains out in the process of waiting for those results to actually come, because it is just one of those things where you have to do enough volume, but you also have to let enough time elapse for that volume to actually turn into results. Everyone's in such a rush these days, and I completely understand why, and I'm in a rush as well. Like, I get it. Sometimes the best solution is just doing exactly what you're doing right now, except doing it for longer and just letting time elapse for those results to come through. The next lesson is that your personal experience should matter more to you in making decisions than external data. And what I mean by external data might be advice, it might be a YouTube video, it might be Huberman telling you that you need a cold plunge and sun your balls 3 times a week. But this is one of the most crucial lessons. When I first got into business, I was big on that, and I completely understand why you would be big on that, because you don't feel like you have that type of experience to make those decisions. So you go on YouTube and you watch someone saying, maybe this niche is saturated, don't do your business like that, do it like this. Do your morning routine that way and not this way. And that was specifically the example that came to mind for me, is that I used to watch Hormozy, and he would be like, don't have a morning routine, just work 4 hours instead of, going to the gym or something in the morning. And I was like, all right, I'll just do that. No problem at all. But then over the years and kind of getting more experience, and also having, the kind of time to actually A/B test that and say, how do I feel if I have a morning routine? How do I feel if I don't have a morning routine? And you can kind of find that happy medium for yourself. But the point of this is that, I missed out on however long of having a morning routine that I really enjoy, where maybe I figure out it makes me really happy to just sit down and have a coffee, go for a walk in the morning, get myself mentally prepared, and then get stuck into work. Or maybe you're the type of person that you work really well at night, and maybe you want to just stay awake until 3 a.m. and do your creative work or whatever it may be. And the point of that isn't to say that Hormozy's massively wrong. The point of that is you can take the information in from online, from these really smart people that can give you advice, but it's also equally as important to not only run your own tests, but to kind of figure out what works for you. Because it's very, very rare that someone who, if they're online, you haven't met them usually, but it's very, very rare that someone's going to have enough context on your life to be able to give you effective advice. And this is one of the key lessons. There are very, very few people that are going to understand your situation enough to give you the right advice. So that means, take on all this information, but at the end of the day, you have to get very confident making decisions based on your own personal data, not external data. No matter how smart someone is, or no matter how much experience they have in a certain, niche or industry or with a certain thing, it doesn't actually matter. Like, it's your life, it's your, maybe it's your biology, maybe it's your business, and there are certain things where you have to decline that advice. And I think you need to give yourself that license to say, nah, fuck that, I'm just going to do it this way. The last one that I've got for you is probably the most cliche, but I want to just frame this in a way that would probably resonate with someone who watches my videos, because it is extremely important. And what I'm talking about is having a long-term mindset. And before you kind of say, piss off, like, I don't want to hear about long-term mindset stuff, just hear me out for a second. Most of the time when you're first starting out at anything, or even, after a while, the initial instinct is that you have to kind of make money. Like, you've got to prove this out. You've got to go make cash as soon as possible. And I completely get that. That was my exact situation. When I first started, I gave myself, I think, 6 months where I was going to go on a gap year from uni. So I was going to take a break. And basically what I was thinking is, if I can't prove this like kind of online money thing in the next 6 months, I'm just going to go back to uni and kind of pretend nothing ever happened. So as a result, you're kind of sprinting to get this proof of concept. Maybe it's your first 10K month, maybe it's your first 100K month, maybe it's even your first $1 million month that you're sprinting for. And while that is the correct thing to do at that time, as in, it is correct. Go out and sprint and do whatever it takes to get your proof of concept, just so you can stay in the game. As soon as you can kind of bring your head up above water and look around and think, what am I actually doing? Like, what am I actually optimizing for? That is a good idea. Because the problem that I see is that a lot of times you can get stuck in this kind of balls to the wall sprint mode for a little bit too long. And you end up just kind of wasting time on stupid shit, and you're not building any equity, you're not building any skills, you're not building really any of the network that you want. And a lot of times it's just easy to operate as if you don't have, a life 30 years from now. Like, it's very easy to, turn 23 or, 21 like I am and just think, I'm shitting cash. Who gives a fuck? This is completely fine. But really, I think it's a good idea, and this is something I've done, is to sometimes just step back, take a little bit of time to think and think, what kind of network do I want to have in 30 years? What kind of skills do I want to have in 10, 20, 30 years? Who do I want to be around? What environment do I want to be in? What do I want to be good at? What industries do I want to play in? And kind of what games you want to play. Because that's the stuff that if you can start working on now while you're a little bit younger, you see older guys talk about it all the time where the compound interest of just being in an industry for like 20 years is ridiculous. So if you're 20, 21, 22, even up to 30, whatever age, you want to start making those long-term bets as soon as you can. So like I said, that doesn't mean don't sprint. Absolutely sprint when you first start. It's so important to do that just so you can stay in the game, get your parents off your back, get everyone to stop asking you what the hell are you doing with your life. That's essential. But like I said, as soon as that happens, where you kind of get out of that and you get your bearings a little bit, that's when you want to zoom out and really assess your situation. And I don't want to act like that's a light thing to do because, again, I completely get it. That was the exact situation. I was going down kind of like a law degree pathway, was really studious in school. So I was like the type of guy that was always studying. I was kind of like into sports as well. So I was, not really going out and doing that sort of stuff. I was just straight training for Australian rules football and studying pretty much. So then, naturally, when I tell my family and stuff like, I'm going to just drop out. I didn't even tell them in the first place. I just did it. And I just started doing stuff and just figured it out on the fly. But when they kind of looked at me, they're like, hey, mate, like, what are you doing? Like, what's the plan here? And I would just be like, just give me a minute, pretty much. And I would just be like, kind of just let me cook. Almost like Alex Pereira to Herb Dean in the UFC 300 main event where he just said, just let me cook. And you need that time, but it's not an easy feat to be able to get people around you, like friends, family, whatever, to get off your back for long enough for you to start cooking up and getting that proof of concept. So again, I'll reiterate one last time. Absolutely fucking sprint to get those initial results. But as soon as you get out of that initial phase, just look around and think, where am I going? Because that's something that will save you dozens of years in the future in basically opportunity cost. And you don't want to waste your time in an opportunity that's not for you long term for, really any time. So I'd strongly recommend that. And that's been something that's recommended to me by a lot of mentors, a lot of people around me that I'm super grateful for because it's great advice. And I wanted to share that here as well. But yeah, that's pretty much everything I've got for you. Hopefully this wasn't a waste of your time. Yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Like, subscribe, all that good shit. I'm going to be posting better stuff over time. Got that long-term mindset, baby. Let's go.